At the end of the day, there's always something new it seems to be outraged about. I'm Dr. Cameo Carter. I'm a board certified pediatrician and mom of three. And I'm really tired. And I think a lot of us are. Every day, whether it's the news cycle or social media or things that we're hearing, there are legitimate things to be frustrated and angry about. And it's really, really tiring. In my field in particular, it feels like there has been this assault not only on science in general, but on medicine and my field in pediatrics. Crazy social media clips, misinformation, sensational headlines. It's just one thing after another. And our world seems really fueled by outrage. Things that are more aggressively stated are what gets more hits and more likes and more engagement. And so having conversations, having more calm discourse is happening a little bit less because it just doesn't garner as much attention. And I think the other thing too is that because there are such horrible things going on, it ends up that there's this cycle of things that are frustrating, things that are kind of that we can't believe, and then some real foundational problems get lost in the mix of the new news cycle, the new outrageous thing that was said. And so some really important things get overshadowed. And so I wonder if some of the nonsense that is coming from people who don't know what they're talking about, if we can give it a little bit less energy, give it a little bit less air. And I think we're speaking up and out against misinformation because it's important, because there's lots of people that are believing things from people who are not qualified to be saying them. So I understand why that's happening, but I think we need to continue to drive energy and discussion towards big picture issues, as well as making sure that we're emphasizing where to get good, credible information from, so that when people who have no business speaking on things they don't know about are saying things, we can just let that go a little bit as noise. Science isn't static. We don't just decide something and it's that way forever. I think about that in my field in pediatrics, and I like to tease my parents, who are wonderful parents, but my patients have heard me tell some of these stories before about how I tease them that it's shocking that I'm actually still alive, given that they apparently tried to kill me so many times as an infant. Now, of course, that is really an outrageous attention-grabbing statement, because my parents were loving and took wonderful care of me. But they also had some practices which were in the 70s accepted as being appropriate and normal. And now me as a pediatrician would say, don't ever do those common practices. So for instance, I was a very colicky baby and was very fussy, and they would do whatever they could to get me to sleep. And that included having a pacifier that was attached on a ribbon that was around my neck. They dipped it in honey and so that I would take it. And they also put me to sleep on my belly. Now, for those of you parents of young kids, you know that several of those are really big no-nos all in a row. We don't attach things around our kid's neck. We found that that is very dangerous. We don't dip pacifiers in honey. Babies should not have honey under 1 year of age. They have a higher chance of getting botulism. And we have found that putting babies back to sleep on their back is much safer than putting them to sleep on their belly. Now, this doesn't mean that the science that was back in the 70s was bad. It doesn't mean that the recommendations were, spurious or trying for bad outcomes or trying to kill me. But with time, we were able to learn that there are better practices, there are best practices. And so I think there's kind of this misunderstanding that because parents or people were told one things about medicine or science before, and our knowledge changes, that we can't trust anything. And I think that we need to be really aware of being misled into that. Guidelines and changing guidelines doesn't mean we're wrong necessarily. It does mean that we're growing and they're learning more, and that we're learning more. And I think it's important that we're also looking at the sources. So making sure that the people that are giving recommendations are people who have training and education in that particular field they're giving advice on, and that they have accountability. So if a doctor is giving you specific advice for you or your family member, there's accountability for that. We have to do documentation. We have to make sure we're following along guidelines. And when you have some influencers and different people who are just broadly saying their recommendations and they're not physicians, there's really no accountability for that. And but doctors do, physicians do, when they are your particular physician and giving you medical advice. So making sure that they have training, the education, accountability for the things that they're giving information about is super important. So if somebody is giving healthcare advice or public health advice, do they have a medical background? Do they have a science background? What is in their interests for making those recommendations? If somebody's making money on clicks and outrage, not outcomes and education, be really skeptical. I think that this is important to take into account for this outrage and this focus that we kind of end up putting on when these crazy things are said every day. And it really causes us to shift our gaze away as we say, hey, that's not true about vaccinations. Again, it's important for us to get the right information out there, or this isn't true about acetaminophen. Again, we want to make sure we're combating misinformation and giving good information. But every time we're arguing with people who have no business saying these things, we are giving less emphasis to things that are really important that we keep on talking about. And I think we need to keep the outrage lens on how horrible healthcare is right now. The healthcare industry right now, it is breaking. It is not sustainable where things are now. Insurance companies' profits have soared while coverage has shrunk. Families are paying more for premiums, deductibles, copays, and are still struggling to get the basic care. Physicians and healthcare workers are burned out. They are leaving the field or limiting their practice. And this is a huge, huge problem that we need to continue to keep shining a light on. Your doctor is probably seeing anywhere between 20 to 30 patients a day. They are often charting until midnight, and they are earning less than they did 10 years ago. While United Health Group, for example, made $22 billion last year. So we need to keep on focusing on these things. And when we hear something crazy, yes, we can check good, reliable sources and say, okay, that's nonsense. But we need to keep coming back to the things that are really important in terms of healthcare, and making sure that we are being aware and looking at the noise that is out there. There is so much outrage bait. I saw a post on Threads the other day that I am certain was just trying to get engagement, and it was saying some nonsense stuff about, Tylenol is not an antibiotic, it is an antihistamine. And there's all these people that are like, oh, what are you talking about? Tylenol's not an antihistamine. I mean, I have this real deep feeling that the person who posted it was very well aware that Tylenol is not an antihistamine, but was trying to get engagement. And then we're getting all riled up about this thing that is just dumb and we should just ignore. And I really get it that we want to have the right information out there. And I really battle with that, because when I see some kind of nonsense, I worry about what my patients are going to be thinking when they see that. And I know that some of my patients do believe some of these things. And I appreciate the fact that they come and they ask me and they want to fact check and verify. But we have to be careful about this outrage bait. We have to be careful about pseudo experts, the conspiracy chatter, the misinterpreted studies. That's a huge problem. And make sure we're continuing to look at the big truths. And so I think part of that is making sure we're always, questioning who's this coming from, what's their motivation, what's their knowledge and expertise. We need to keep focusing on access to healthcare. We need to keep focusing on affordability. We need to focus on physician sustainability. There are more people who are leaving my field than are going into it. People don't want to do primary care in general anymore, and pediatrics, I fear, is a dying breed. We need to focus on health equity. We need to make sure that people all have access to really good health care. So when you're seeing things, just looking for ways to kind of always go through and apply that filter of, the source, who said it, the scope, is it based on expertise or is it based on opinion? And the solution, are they offering a good education and information? Are they trying to help, or are they just stirring up anger? And that will help us filter and not expend so much energy to a lot of this noise and nonsense, and really try to refocus our energy to the things that we need to focus on. Just encouraging each other that we want to amplify the things that really matter. Every repost, every share, every retweet for people who are tweeting, that's a form of power. And let's not do a lot of nonsense, where we're sharing or amplifying stuff that is crazy. Try to unfollow noise. That's one thing that I do, and I'm kind of torn by that, because I also want to know what my patients are hearing and seeing. But, look at it and see, is this stuff that is really valuable and is giving you more information? Read directly from sources that are reliable. The American Academy of Pediatrics, while I don't think they've always done a really good job of being champions for pediatricians, I think they're great advocates for kids. Making sure that you're staying informed but not being consumed by the information is really helpful. I think we have to be engaged and involved in caring about healthcare reform. That affects all of us. Support evidence-based public health. That is in the interest of us only. There's not ulterior motives there. And really value professionals who want to help people, that are making efforts to do that. The truth is, we're all exhausted. We're exhausted by the noise, by the fear, by the cost of caring. And I mean that from a very practical, pragmatic, but also emotional sense. Your outrage, though, is a resource. It takes your energy. Let's really work at spending it where it counts.